She was
This is purely a journalistic point of view. Nothing more has been said in this video other than that of which has been reported by various media sources and backed up with sources seen at the end of this video.
a revolutionary force, not only in women's wrestling, but all of wrestling. Joni Laura went from Hunter Hearst Helmsley's storyline bodyguard to an active competitor, accomplishing what no woman had done before, winning the Intercontinental Championship and competing in both the Royal Rumble and the King of the Ring. At one point, she was slated for a match for the WWF Championship. Laura's future seemed as bright as any male superstar. Then, a cruel reversal of fortune saw Chyna dismissed from the WWF, with her succumbing to personal demons. Like her male counterparts, she found that the world of professional wrestling carries many dangers, ready to prey upon its workers. Join us now as Behind the Titantron examines the self-destruction of Chyna. Joni Laura was born on the 27th of December 1969 in Rochester, New York. She recalls a troubled childhood in her memoir, If They Only Knew. Her father, Joe, dealt with alcohol abuse, leading to various troubles. In If They Only Knew, Laura looks back at several incidents where alcohol got the better of her father, shaking a bread knife at her to make a point while he was drunkenly making himself a sandwich. He accidentally stabbed my mother in the thigh. There were times when he was so drunk he brought women home, completely forgetting that he was married, and once he allegedly fed me sewing needles as a snack. Not surprisingly, her parents divorced when she was young, with Laura's father leaving her and her siblings, Sonny and Kathy, to be raised by her mother. She describes her mother as someone who was verbally and physically abusive. She remembers constantly moving, as her mother married several times. She endured constant arguments with her mother, who piled emotional abuse on all her children. Laura's childhood was anything but normal. Her dysfunctional life was not restricted to her home life. In school, she had an unlikely romance. There was this guy, really funny, sense of humor, smart, who helped me through this tough course that I was just stinking up the place in. And he was tall, like me. We'd spend time after school together studying, yucking it up, getting down with fruit roll-ups, having a great time, until that particular day. That's when he finally made the big pass and kissed me. And don't get me wrong, it was a good kiss. It's just that, well, he was one of my teachers, so I sort of broke up with him, if you could really call it that. Given her tumultuous youth, it's no surprise she fell into trouble. To calm myself, I ate lots and lots of food, stuck my arm down my throat, hit the bathroom tiles, and drove the big white porcelain bus, vomiting until my stomach lining started showing up in the toilet. I broke blood vessels in my eyes, developed spider veins. I looked like shit because I wasn't gaining any weight. While she experimented with drugs and alcohol, she did not use them recreationally. Still, her mother became suspicious and gave her an ultimatum of either going to a drug rehabilitation facility or leaving their home. Joni chose to leave. She eventually reunited with her father, embarking on a series of misadventures with him, a man known for his many financial schemes and subsequent failures. Although her father was not abusive like her mother, he took advantage of her financially, allegedly having her take out student loans which he could use for personal gain. Over time, his antics drove a wedge between father and daughter. Joni attended the University of Tampa, where at her father's suggestion, she also enrolled in ROTC. She studied hard, focusing on getting good grades, but her time in college was not without incident. She recalls getting drunk and passing out, only to wake up to 2 college football players sexually assaulting her. It's arguable her history of abuse contributed to her later problems with drugs and alcohol. Nevertheless, she stuck with school and graduated with a degree in Spanish literature. Still, her future seemed uncertain. Her father suggested she volunteer for the Peace Corps as it would look good on her resume. However, Laura left the Corps just months after serving in Guatemala, unhappy with the work and feeling she lacked the character to work in the Peace Corps. At one point, she considered a career in law enforcement and reportedly was interviewed by the Secret Service for over a year. She would also compete as a fitness model, but found it difficult placing in any event due to her unusual size as well as behind-the-scenes politics. Eventually, she had enough, leaving the world of fitness competition. She drifted from job to job, working as a bartender, a saleswoman, and a singer. Laura's sister Kathy invited her to work with her selling pages, and Laura took her up on the offer. She found success selling papers, but was bit by the wrestling bug. Although she was never a wrestling fan, she saw wrestling matches and suddenly envisioned herself in the squared circle, entertaining fans. The future ninth wonder of the world had heard about wrestling great Walter Killer Kowalski's wrestling school, but had no idea how to contact him. She took a long shot, looking up Kowalski in the phone book and reaching him late at night. The short phone call ended with Kowalski informing her he needed $2,000 in cash. This auspicious start is how Laura broke into wrestling. If Laura's account is to be believed, Kowalski's school left a lot to be desired. As she describes it, suddenly, I'm in a bad, low-budget karate movie. The place is furnished with yard sale rejects, unmatching chairs, cast iron weights painted that awful green, a bathroom you wouldn't use if you were wearing a $1,000 evening gown and had the runs. As for training, she recalls learning many shoot maneuvers, but no training in the art of wrestling for an audience. Of her training with Kowalski, Laura claims, most of what Walter taught us was bad. He never taught us anything about the psychology of pro wrestling or how to physically tell a story in the ring. The ebb and flow, the heroism in taking a punch, coming back from the dead. Hell, you can learn more playing Mortal Kombat. You see the little animated figures just after their lungs have been ripped out, how they teeter, stagger, fall dead. You could learn more watching a bad B-Western or a Bruce Lee movie. You can pick up more about storytelling and psychology spending 10 Vince McMahon than spending $2,000 on Walter and his vegetarian sermons. As poor as Kowalski's training may have been, the fact she trained with Kowalski would prove advantageous to Laura later on when she tried breaking into the WWF. She began working independent shows and recalls how she first broke into the business. Laura's friend knew a WWF agent, referred to as Agent Orange, and told him about Laura's work. The agent left Laura a ticket at a WWF show in Springfield, Massachusetts, and told her to meet him there. Laura drove there and watched the show, but waited in vain. Fortunately, she saw WWF workers after the show, including referee Dave Hebner, and learned which hotel Agent Orange was staying at. She called him and he agreed to meet her. The meeting seemed to be going nowhere until Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Stone Cold Steve Austin walked in. Laura and Triple H connected because they both trained at Kowalski's school. They shared stories of the school's many quirks, forming a bond. From there, Triple H and Shawn Michaels spent hours looking over her portfolio and watching a compilation tape of her matches. Impressed, both men saw Laura would make a good bodyguard character. WWF owner Vince McMahon wasn't so sure. He was reluctant to have a woman beating up male superstars. Reportedly, his initial response was N-O, no, and hell no. Despite much cajoling, McMahon stuck to his guns.
Fired!
Forget it. Not gonna happen. Okay, so she hits a guy. What then? The guy's gonna hit her back? No one's working with her. No one's gonna sell her. It's taboo. And if they even did, who's gonna want to allow themselves to get beat up by a woman? McMahon wasn't the only person to make such a case. However, others saw Laura as a potential star. Reportedly, she was approached by WCW to become the first and only female member of the NWO. With the WWF reluctant to sign her, Laura was ready to sign with WCW. According to her, Vince's son Shane lobbied tirelessly for her, telling Vince what an asset she would be to the WWF. Right before
Wrestling. Ugh. Sweaty, steroid stacked stuntmen rubbing themselves against each other.
Sell your house to Homebusters, your local We Buy Ugly Houses people with over 20 years experience. Some of these startup home